The psychology of money. Why you're still broke. Imagine two people. Let's call them Alex and Ben. They work at the same company, in the same role, and earn the exact same salary. On paper, their financial lives should look identical, but in reality, they're worlds apart. Alex feels in control. He's steadily building his wealth, takes vacations without piling on debt, and sleeps well at night knowing he has a safety net. Ben, on the other hand, is in a constant state of low-key panic. He's living paycheck to paycheck, feels like he's drowning in credit card debt, and is stuck on a financial treadmill he just can't get off. He's not alone. A recent report found that a staggering 77% of people said the past year has been financially stressful. For Ben, that stress is a daily reality. So what's the real difference between them? It's not how smart they are. It's not their education. It's not that Alex just got lucky. The difference is completely invisible. It's a set of deeply ingrained beliefs, psychological scripts, that dictate every single financial decision they make, often without them even realizing it. These scripts are the reason one person can thrive while another, with the exact same resources, drowns. And the most important question you need to ask yourself is this: which script is running your life? The problem, the invisible cage. So, what are these money scripts? Think of them as the subconscious operating system for your financial brain. They're the core beliefs you hold about money, and they've been programmed into you since you were a kid. Morgan Housel, author of The Psychology of Money, notes that your personal experiences, which might be a tiny fraction of what's happened in the world, can make up 80% of how you think the world works. These scripts come from watching your parents handle money, from a grandparent who always said, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or from the cultural messages we absorb about what success is supposed to look like. We think a spreadsheet will solve our money problems because we think it's just a numbers game. But we're wrong. Money is deeply emotional, and ignoring that is like ignoring the very thing that makes you tick. Our financial habits are deeply shaped by our upbringing and our background, influencing everything from how we spend to how we save. One of the biggest problems is that we almost never talk about these scripts. Money is one of the last great taboos. We'll talk about our health, our relationships, our careers, but our bank accounts? Off limits. For nearly 3/4 of people, money is a source of stress in their relationship, yet so many couples avoid the conversation entirely. This silence creates an invisible cage. We live our entire lives guided by these inherited beliefs without ever stopping to ask, is this actually true? Is this even helping me? This can lead to a devastating condition known as a scarcity mindset. When you constantly feel like you don't have enough, your brain's ability to think clearly actually shrinks. It's like trying to run complex software on a computer with almost no memory. Your brain gets so laser-focused on just surviving the next 24 hours, how to pay that bill, how to afford groceries, that it loses the ability to make smart, long-term decisions. You get trapped in a cycle of short-term thinking that just makes the long-term problem worse. It's a psychological trap, and it's why so many people feel stuck. In fact, in 2024, 44% of people reported feeling like their finances control their life. It's an exhausting way to live, a constant state of worry, frustration, and discouragement. The agitation, how your brain works against you. If those scripts are the cage, then your own brain often acts as the guard, locking you inside. Our minds are wired with ancient survival instincts that, in the modern financial world, are just plain self-destructive. Let's unmask the 5 psychological villains that are actively working to keep you broke. First up is the villain of herd mentality. This is that little voice in your head that screams, "Everyone else is doing it, so I should too." It's the fear of missing out, FOMO, that drives us to buy into a bubble at its peak, or panic sell everything during a market crash. We see stories on social media of people getting rich overnight, and our rational brain just shuts down, replaced by a primal need to follow the crowd. These social pressures have a huge influence on our financial choices, often without us even realizing it. The second villain is the pain of losing. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it's one of the most powerful forces in finance. Here's what it means. The pain you feel from losing $100 is psychologically twice as powerful as the pleasure you feel from gaining $100. This irrational fear of loss makes us do terrible things. We hold on to losing investments for way too long, just hoping they'll get back to what we paid, because selling would mean making that loss real. Or we're so terrified of losing anything that we avoid investing altogether, letting our savings get eaten away by inflation. The fear can be so paralyzing that it leads people to avoid financial planning entirely. Next is our third, and maybe most expensive villain, the ego trap. This is that relentless pressure to signal how well you're doing, to keep up with the Joneses. We live in a world of performative wealth, where social media makes everyone else's life look way glossier than it actually is. One study found that when we compare ourselves to people who seem better off, it triggers a stronger desire for high-status brands and makes us more willing to spend on luxury goods. This fuels a cycle of overspending on stuff we don't need to impress people we don't even know. It's a game you can never win because the finish line is always moving. The result is lifestyle inflation, where your spending magically rises to meet and often exceed whatever you earn. A 2024 report found that 57% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and that includes 40% of people earning over $100,000 a year. This isn't an income problem, it's an ego problem. The fourth villain is the anchor of the past, otherwise known as anchoring bias. This happens when our brain latches onto the first piece of information it gets and just refuses to let go. Let's say you buy a stock for $50, it then drops to $30. Even if all the signs are pointing down, your brain is anchored to that original $50 price. You tell yourself, I'll sell when it gets back to what I paid. That anchor prevents you from making a smart decision based on what's happening now, chaining your financial future to a past mistake. And finally, villain number 5, the confirmation echo chamber. This is our natural tendency to look for information that confirms what we already believe and to ignore anything that challenges it. If you think a certain investment is a sure thing, you will subconsciously filter everything you read and hear to find proof that you're right. You become blind to the risks because your brain is actively hiding them from you. This is especially dangerous now, when algorithms are literally designed to show us more of what we already like, reinforcing our beliefs whether they're right or wrong. These 5 villains, herd mentality, loss aversion, the ego trap, anchoring, and confirmation bias, are the psychological drivers behind almost every major money mistake. They operate in the shadows of our minds, sabotaging our best intentions. The solution: rewriting your money script. So, how do you escape the cage? How do you beat these villains? You do it by consciously and deliberately rewriting your money scripts. As author Morgan Housel says, doing well with money has a little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. Financial success isn't about some complex formula. It's about mastering your own mind. Here are 5 new scripts you can install in your brain, starting today. From reacting to automating. Willpower is a finite resource. If you rely on it to make good financial decisions every single day, you're fighting a losing battle. You'll get tired, you'll get stressed, and you will give in. The solution? Take your flawed emotional self out of the equation. Automate your financial life. Set up automatic transfers to your savings and investment accounts for the day you get paid. This one simple move bypasses that whole internal debate about whether to save or spend. It just happens. It's no longer a choice, it's your new default. It's the single best way to pay your future self first. From more to enough. The modern world is basically a machine designed to make you want more. But the psychological game of more has no finish line. The only way to win is to refuse to play. This means you have to define what enough actually means to you. Sit down and get brutally honest about what you really want out of life. Is it a bigger house, or is it the freedom to work less? A luxury car, or the peace of mind that comes from having zero debt? When you define your own finish line, you stop looking at what everyone else is doing. That need to keep up is a huge driver of overspending, and defining enough is how you escape the trap. You realize that real wealth isn't about having the most, it's about having what you need to live a life that is genuinely your own. From short-term panic to long-term patience, This script is the perfect antidote to loss aversion and herd mentality. Building wealth isn't a smooth, straight line up. It's a wild ride with terrifying drops and thrilling climbs. You have to understand that volatility isn't the risk. It's the price you pay for admission to long-term returns. If you want the reward, you have to be willing to stomach the uncertainty. Your goal isn't to perfectly time the market. That's impossible. Your goal is to develop the emotional strength to simply endure it. Patience is your financial superpower. Compounding, the engine of all wealth, only works its magic over decades. Your job isn't to be a genius, it's to be consistent and patient, and let time do the heavy lifting for you. From being right to being resilient. This script fights back against overconfidence and anchoring. Look, you will make mistakes. You will be wrong about investments. The market will do things you never expected. Financial success is built on humility. So instead of creating a financial plan that requires you to be right all the time, build one that's strong enough to survive when you're wrong. This is the idea of a margin of safety. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify. Don't take risks that could wipe you out. And most importantly, have an emergency fund. An emergency fund is the ultimate shield between you and life's chaos. It gives you options when things go wrong, and it stops you from being forced to sell your long-term investments at the worst possible time. From money to freedom. This is the ultimate reframe. It changes what money even means. For most of my life, I thought the goal of money was to buy things. A fancy car, a big house. I was wrong. The ultimate thing money can buy is control over your time. Real wealth isn't the stuff you can see. It's the unseen financial assets that give you the freedom to choose. It's waking up in the morning and being able to say, I can do whatever I want today. It's the power to take a lower-paying job that you actually love. It's the security to walk away from a toxic boss. It's the flexibility to be there for your family when they need you. Saving and investing isn't about deprivation. It's about liberation. You aren't giving up stuff today. You're buying your freedom for tomorrow. If these psychological scripts hit home for you and you're ready to start rewriting your own, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It's a small click, but it's a powerful declaration that you're ready to take back control of your financial story. And now I want to hear from you. Which of those 5 psychological villains, herd mentality, loss aversion, the ego trap, anchoring, or confirmation bias, has messed with you the most? Drop it in the comments below. There is absolutely no shame here. Reading through the comments helps all of us realize we're not alone in these struggles, and we can learn a ton from each other's experiences. Let's go back to Alex and Ben, the 2 people we met at the start, with the exact same income. The difference between them was never about the money. It was about the story they told themselves about money. Ben was living out a script written by fear, scarcity, and social pressure. Alex was living out a script of patience, discipline, and freedom. The most powerful financial tool you will ever have isn't a hot stock tip or a budgeting app. It's the narrative running inside your own head. You have the power to edit that narrative. You can fire the villains of your past and hire new heroes for your future. You can stop being a character in a story someone else wrote and finally become the author of your own. You have the power to write a new story for yourself starting today. A story of wealth, of freedom, and most importantly, of peace of mind.